Hey ladies and gentlemen, if any men are watching, so I wanted to come back and update you on my call with my doctor. Um, as you recall my video yesterday, I was very upset about the way the egg retrieval turned out in my results because they were pretty much, I don't know, I just couldn't figure it out. And it's not to say that I figured it out yet, but at least I've been able to talk to some people and seemingly get some answers. So the first call I made this morning was to my insurance company because this is my first IVF cycle. I've never done any type of fertility before. My insurance company didn't require IUI, so I didn't do that. I went straight to IVF because I thought IVF would give me a good chance of having embryos for the future. So I thought as I mentioned before, I thought I could kill two birds with one stone. And that was actually very important to me. It was the reason I decided to forego IUI, even though IUI wasn't required, and just go straight to IVF, although I know it's way more invasive and possibly more of an emotional roller coaster. Well, with that in mind, so I called my insurance company to figure out if I was required to do a transfer. I don't know. Insurance companies can be weird. I didn't want them to say, well, you didn't do a transfer, so it's preservation. And because it's preservation, we're not going to pay for it. I didn't know what they were going to do. So I just figured it's better safe than sorry. So that was my first call, to which, and a lot of you may know this already. They said that I was fine to do whatever I wanted to do. I have a $50,000 lifetime maximum for my insurance, my husband has it as well. So it's technically 100,000, but it doesn't work like that. And pretty much everything's billed under me. So we'll probably just use my 50,000 because he doesn't have any actual fertility issues. I mean, not that I do, but everything's done to the woman for the most part. So they're not, according to the hospital or the Cornell Reproductive Medical Center, they're not billing anything pretty much under him, although I do have an authorization for him as well, but I don't know if that's how they bill it. So from what my understanding is from the insurance company, as long as I can keep going until I either run out the $50,000 or I go for 10 years, because my authorization is good for 10 years, and I got the authorization in March of this year. So I can go for 10 years. I don't remember the exact day in March, but, March 2028 sometime. Or, which is probably more likely, I'll run out of money. So whichever comes first. So they said I did not have to do a transfer. I could decide to do another cycle or whatever I wanted to do. I could switch doctors because, as I mentioned, going to Cornell, although it is highly ranked center of excellence, I felt that it was way more of a factory experience that I was having, and that there's so many women in and out, and I just felt more like a number than an individualized person. That's just my experience. I mean, nothing negative really happened until about now, but I did always feel rushed and feel like I didn't have enough time to really ask all the questions, and I was kind of trying to fight for time to ask questions. So after that, I called my doctor's office this morning because I'm scheduled for a transfer tomorrow. They had scheduled me for the transfer as soon as, I guess, I don't know, when they did the retrieval, and once they found they had 3 fertilized embryos, they, I guess, scheduled me for a transfer, a day 3 transfer. So it's scheduled for tomorrow at 1:45, or at least I need to be there at 1:45. But I didn't want to go through with it. As I mentioned yesterday, I needed answers, and I did, I expected more eggs and more embryos, and so I needed answers, and I wanted to possibly just delay the transfer and do another cycle, or maybe even just free these 3 embryos and try naturally for a while, or go to another facility and have them, it was just, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I did not want to transfer At least that's what I thought I knew. I don't know. It's just been such a crazy emotional roller coaster from Saturday when I had the retrieval, finding out that number until now. I've been up, down. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and then 10 seconds I didn't know. I was questioning, so I don't know. But when I spoke to my doctor today, he said, and again, it's all about how much trust you put into what he said, because after my experience with my retrieval, I don't really trust anything. But essentially, guys, I'm an outlier. um, So, as I've been documenting everything and I've been telling you, and I've been very honest about the number of follicles that I had, about the follicle size, I don't even know enough to lie about it because I don't know what anything is at this point. So I have follicles that were like 20 millimeters, I believe it is, and 19, 18, 17. And some of the smallest ones that he counted, I'm sure there were some smaller ones, but some of the smaller ones that he counted were around 15. So they thought everything was great. And again, I had between 15 and 20 follicles. So they were expecting way more eggs. So he did say that to me. He said they were shocked by the number of eggs that they got. And I'm like, yeah, what does this mean? Is something wrong? And he said normally follicle size is a good indicator of, the egg and the egg maturity. But I'm an outlier, and apparently that's not the case with me. So even if I had very large follicles, which I did, they in some cases either didn't contain an egg or contained an immature egg. So not only was he shocked by the number of eggs that they retrieved, he was also shocked by the fact that of the 6 that they retrieved, 3 were immature. So I think if they retrieved 6 and all 6 were mature, and we were able to successfully fertilize 6, I'd feel a lot better because I'd be in a better place, because at least I'd have maybe 2 for transfer now and 4 to put on ice. But I don't have that. That's not my reality. And this is how I respond to the medication, which is crazy because, as I said, I don't have a low ovarian reserve or any of these other issues. So I don't have any diagnosed fertility issues, but my body responds to the medication in a weird way, I guess. So they were seeing all these really large follicles. They were seeing a good number of follicles, and then come to find out they weren't, when all was said and done, when they went in there, they weren't what they expected them to be. So I said, okay, what about freezing them? Freezing the 3 that I have, trying another cycle. I had a whole list of questions I wrote down. I had like 12 questions. I wanted to know what happened. I mean, he explained, the follicles were larger and I had a lot, but I'm an outlier. So they didn't know. This is my first cycle ever. They didn't know how I would respond. There was no way to predict how I would respond. Normally, they triggered. He said we triggered at a size when it should have not been a problem. If they had to do it again, the protocol, they couldn't increase my medications too much because he said they wanted to keep me away from the ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, assuming that's what that means. So he even said it, we had to decrease your medication because we didn't want you getting close to that. So even if I was to do another cycle, he said they probably couldn't increase my medication too much. He could increase a little bit, but he couldn't increase it too much because my blood work, I have no room for them to increase it. My blood work comes back normal. So when they start adding this medication, it gets me closer to whatever the dangerous levels are for that. He said they might trigger differently next time. So this time I just triggered for HCG. He didn't say how they would trigger differently. He just said they would trigger differently. I think his biggest things that he would do differently if he had to do another cycle would be, as I mentioned already, trigger differently. And the other thing would be to push me one more day. He said they had already felt that they had pushed me out quite far. And listen, I only did 9 days. But he said they would probably try to push me one more day. So normally they don't do that because they would be afraid that the eggs would be, overcooked, for lack of a better explanation. But in my case, given that he said it's more deceptive with me, like my body was showing all these, like, oh yeah, I have really large follicles. I have, lots of follicles. And he thought they were all in a really good place, but clearly they weren't. So he said we could probably push it out one more day. I guess a lot happens in a day because, for the amount of follicles, for the size of the follicles, for the amount of follicles that I had that were a really good size, would one more day have made a significant difference? I don't know. I would like to have gotten a second opinion, but I can't because I don't have time to, because they have me scheduled for a transfer tomorrow. So it's not even like I could go take these results, go to another doctor, say, what do you think? Should I transfer these 3 embryos now? Because they're like, those embryos would be, either frozen by that point or they wouldn't exist anymore. So, I did ask him if they triggered too early, which I already mentioned. He said no, because, maybe they would have done one more day, but not much difference. So I also mentioned that all my eggs were fertilized with ICSI. And I asked why, because I just wanted to make sure. I know ICSI is usually done when there's something wrong with the sperm, and I wanted to make sure there was nothing wrong with it. Is there something wrong with that now? Because I already have enough surprises going on with me. I wanted to know whether there were any surprises with my husband, to which he said no, the sperm was fine. They chose to do ICSI because I only had 3 eggs, and they wanted to make sure they fertilized. And so he said, because otherwise, without ICSI, they run the risk of none of them fertilizing, and then I wouldn't have any. And given that I had such a low number of eggs that matured, they did ICSI. The biggest thing that I talked about with him was whether I could freeze these 3. Because, yes, having a baby now was important to me, but I'm 35. I wanted to preserve the quality of my eggs now so that I wouldn't have to try to get older eggs later. And that was why IVF was appealing to me. That's why it was always appealing to me, because I thought I could get this egg quality now when things were close to their height, and I wouldn't have to worry about it, because I know that fertility rapidly declines as you pass 35. But they say man plans and God laughs. And I think this might be where I am now, because I made all these plans and I prayed about it, but I also did what I wanted to do. I made all these plans and it did not turn out the way that I wanted them to turn out. And I know anyone going through these fertility process, they probably feel the same way. But for someone to have no real diagnosed fertility issues, to have unexplained infertility, and then to go from that and have your body respond in the way that mine's responded is just, I don't know. Maybe I should have taken some supplements. I asked him. Listen, he probably doesn't, I don't know. He never told me about any supplements to take. I asked, were there different supplements I should have been taking? Were there different things I should have been doing? He said no. No. I asked, was there anything wrong with my fertility that they could determine? He said no. He said everything is fine. It's just that you respond to the medication in this way. What do you do? Sorry, quick hiatus. I had to go check on my dogs. So I don't know. I'm discouraged that even if I was to do another cycle, they can tinker with the protocol, but honestly, at this point, they're just playing. And maybe that's what it is for everybody, right? They're looking at blood work and they're adjusting accordingly. But all my stuff is misleading. So I'm concerned that even if we do push it out a day, we trigger differently, what if I still get a low number? Or what if I don't get any? I know that's a risk that a lot of women take, but I don't have a low ovarian reserve or any of those other conditions. I don't have any of that, at least not that I'm being told. So the same way I was trying to plan for the future, now I'm just like, what do I do? So my doctor was really pushing the transfer for tomorrow. So I have the 3 embryos and he wants to transfer 2. Shush, mama. Sorry. he wants to transfer to. And he's like, if it takes, you'll have a pregnancy and hopefully that'll be successful. And then after the pregnancy, after you deliver, you can come back shortly after delivering and we can start on the next protocol. So I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. Newborns, possibly twins, since we're going to do 2 embryos. And then I'll show up again like, hey, let's start this whole shooting them up thing again. And I don't know how I will feel at that point. I'll be at least a year older. I'll be a mother, assuming that happens. And I'm sure I'll be tired. If I'm not tired already, but I'm probably a different level of tired that I can't even understand right now. So, there's that. So there were just sorry, the dogs. There were just all these questions. Do I go ahead and do another cycle, see if I can get more eggs, freeze these 3, and try to get some more. And even if it's just 3 more, that'll give me 6. Maybe do a transfer from that cycle, have the 3 on there. But the doctor was saying that they didn't plan for me to transfer. This wasn't preservation. This was a transfer. And I said, I understand that, but things have changed. And then he says, if they were going to freeze, they would have liked to have known that outright because they would have probably frozen them already and something like that. And he kind of double talked himself because at one point he said they could freeze them on day 5, but then he said something like most embryos don't last till day 5. So if I choose to do a day 5 freeze, I guess, then I'm risking these embryos not surviving day 5, which that was kind of heartbreaking, right? Because he was saying that I may end up with nothing, and then all of this would have been for nothing, and then I would have to start over anyway, and I wouldn't even have the embryos. Then I guess he could hear my frustration on the phone. And then he said, well, we could possibly freeze them tomorrow. I'll alert the lab and let them know to be prepared to do either way, to either freeze. Sorry, my husband must be coming home because that's normally when she does that. To either freeze. Mama. To either freeze or I don't even know what I was saying. Damn dogs. But anyway, so he kind of made me think that if I froze them, if I wait to freeze them, I might lose them. And then he said maybe, oh yeah, this is what I was saying. He was going to alert the lab that what is going on? Why is everybody doing everything right now? Okay, so let's try this again. Hopefully 3rd time's the charm. So all that said, I have decided to do the transfer tomorrow. You think I'd be happy? I'm not happy. I'm just confused. There's been a lot of information, and in the last 48 hours since Saturday after the egg retrieval, I've been all over. My emotions have been all over because it first went from the disappointing news of that to having it reinforced with the call on Sunday to trying to get in contact with this doctor today. So it's just all been reinforced, and I've been all over emotionally, especially on Saturday when you're all still groggy and recovering from the medication and from the retrieval. To have all of that additional information and emotional decisions to make was not the best situation for me, but it's where I ended up being. And I think ultimately we're going to do the transfer tomorrow. I'll transfer 2 of my 3 embryos. The 3rd will be frozen. The doctor told me he did not know the egg quality or the embryo quality as of yet, that it was too early to tell. Because he also mentioned they might not survive till tomorrow. I mean, like, then what are we talking about? He said, well, there's no way to tell yet. They've divided. They look good. They look strong in the lab. They've divided into four. They have to divide into eight or something he was saying. And then, they all three seem pretty strong. So I guess, I don't know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I don't know how they're going to choose. But the third one will be frozen, and maybe I'll have that one for the future if necessary. It's like an emergency. But even if you freeze these things, sometimes they don't thaw out well. They don't survive being thawed. So that was also a reason why I chose to go ahead and try to transfer now. Because since I have such a small number, if I was to freeze them and then, like two didn't survive the thaw, and then I had one and that one didn't take. I don't know. It's never really any right or easy answers here, right? It's so many ways you can go, and what I'm doing, someone else in my situation might make a total different decision. And honestly, I woke up this morning just with the thought that I wasn't going to transfer any of them, and I was going to freeze and probably do another cycle or try naturally and then go back to them if I needed to. And I'm ending the day with a different thought. And I know it's like that sometimes. We're all over the place. I guess I need to be grateful for the fact that I have any embryos to transfer. I just didn't expect this result. It's almost like, am I not an IVF candidate because my body responds in such a weird way? I don't know. Like, for all intents and purposes, everything looked great. I had large follicles. I had lots of follicles. I had great numbers. All my numbers are still great, except for my egg count, which is, to me, that's why we're doing this, right? We're doing this to get mature, healthy eggs that can be fertilized and become mature, or I don't know, good embryos. Probably better than I do. So I'll keep you posted. And I'm grateful for the people that have reached out to me and I've been able to talk to during this process. It's meant so much to me because it is an isolating process if you don't know anyone who's going through it or who understands it. And, my husband's here for a support system, but he doesn't get it. And I wouldn't expect him to. He's never going to understand it the way that another woman, especially a woman who is going through it, would understand it. So thank you so much to the people who have been there to talk to me through this and to help explain things to me, because there's a lot I don't know. And I will say, in this process, there's so much you don't know, and you don't know what to ask. And, someone mentioned to me, I'm kind of jumping back a little bit. Someone mentioned to me that they could have just increased my medication. One of the other YouTubers in the community. And, my doctor said they couldn't increase my dosage because, again, my numbers were so good that I would have been close to the ovarian hyperstimulation. So I just want to make sure I made that point, because I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Even with IVF and doing the medications, it's almost like there's, it's never a guarantee in life, right? Nothing about this process is guaranteed. You could transfer, get pregnant, and still that might not be guaranteed. So nothing's guaranteed. It's just, to have this response is really hard, because it's a little defeating. It is very defeating because, this is only my first round, and they can play around with the medication somewhat, not too much, he said. And then let's say they do it again, they get all these great numbers. What makes this different than last time? I got good numbers this time. Yeah. So, I think I have to rely on faith, which I haven't been as much. And I know I started off, and I've been I don't know what I've been relying on, but I think maybe I haven't been. Maybe I was thinking relying on the medications. um, I don't know, but I need to refocus because maybe this isn't the route for me to go. But I do want to do another cycle, so we'll see how the transfer goes, and if it turns out positive, and I'm able to successfully carry a pregnancy and deliver. I think I probably would go back to do another cycle. With knowing what they know now, maybe I can get a protocol that's more tailored to my unique situation. And because I am concerned about the future, extending fertility is an important aspect and something that I believe so much in, and that a lot of women don't have the opportunity to do until they run into problems. And I had unexplained fertility, but not an actual diagnosis of anything that we could point to. And so there was no way to know that I'd end up being an outlier, as he put it. So that's it. I'm going to do the transfer. It's tomorrow afternoon. I'll update, but I think I won't know officially whether it is taken. They have me scheduled to do luteal blood tests on November 6th and November 8th, and then a pregnancy test on November 12th. So that was all scheduled even before I did the transfer. Before I did the retrieval. So I'll continue to keep you posted. And before I go, just one last point. And maybe I'm the only one who feels that way, but that progesterone and oil shot hurts. Of all the shots I've done, nothing else hurts like the progesterone and oil. Like my butt is still, it was fine. I didn't get any lumps, thank God, but it's just sore in that area. And it's like, are you really supposed to do this every day for who knows how long? That's crazy. Like, the follicle was like that. It didn't bother me a little bit. The Menopur burned a little bit, but after the shot, it was done. The Cetrotide, I had that skin reaction the one time, and then I didn't have any more issues. The trigger shot didn't hurt me at all. This shot, anyway, and so that's something I get to look forward to. But anyway, pray for me if you do, and if not, at very least, please wish me luck. I'll keep you posted.